That works. For some. Okay. So let's disengage from the past and the future and try to bring our minds to the present. Really feel our body sitting here, the sensations of the body, sensations of the ears, the awareness of our ears and our nose, our body, our taste buds. And rejoice that you made it here safe and sound. You're still a human being. You're not crawling around the floor as an ant in the gompa. And rejoice in all the good conditions you woke up to this morning. Not perfect conditions, just good conditions. Knowing that there are many, many, many sentient beings who did not have that experience. They're trying to generate compassion for all those suffering from something at this moment, including yourself. So I imagine we all came here this morning to study a little bit, to think about the teachings. And we want to really think about the great value of this opportunity, the meaningfulness of this opportunity, that opportunity to help us develop positive states of mind. And think about why we would want to do that. There's nothing wrong with starting a reflection of thinking about what's in it for me. We need reasons for ourselves to make changes in our attitude and our habits. So we can start there, and from there, we can ripple out to thinking about how will this benefit those around me. So try to generate strong intention, a positive motivation to use your time well this morning. Okay, let's recite the four immeasurables. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. And the refuge prayer. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit sentient beings. Careful, careful. Do you need, oh yeah, there's a water bottle spill. Another mindfulness bill for us.
I didn't want to disturb everyone, so thank you.
Okay, I'm going to keep teaching even though we're distracted. So, because how many Buddhists does it take to wipe up the water? So, I'm involved. It takes a couple of extra. So, ah. So trying to develop our good qualities. What are our good qualities? Kindness, compassion, kindness, generosity, patience,
being ethical.
ethics. Yep. Curiosity. We need curiosity about the teachings, don't we? Why would that be true? You know, the Buddha encouraged us to investigate the teaching, not just to take his word for it. You know, so you know, we want to be curious about ourselves. We want to look at our own minds, you know, and kind of go, I wonder why that's my automatic reaction. What's that about? What does it say about what I believe? And do I really believe that? Because sometimes we pick up habits, you know, gazillion years ago, and we haven't thought about them. We haven't realized they're still directing our actions, you know? And then when we look, we go, you know, that's not really necessary. It's not even true, you know? So there are all these things. So like the habit of denigrating yourself. Usually when we do that, whatever we're saying is totally not true. You know? So we want to kind of question those thoughts. When we're judging others, same thing. You know? And eventually you start to know that most of what we think is not based on anything that's true. We're making stuff up in our minds to fit some story that we've got going. So the story may be about ourselves. Oh, we're not worthy. We're not this and that. It may be about somebody else. Oh, I knew not to trust him, blah, 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 whatever it is. We really want to understand that the less we make up stories, the more we actually experience what's happening now, the less we'll be afraid, less judgmental we'll be, less, all sorts of things. We'll notice all the good stuff we do that will kind of argue against our self-loathing. We'll notice how many good things are going on in the world at the same time as the few horrible things that are going on in the world. It changes our perspective. It helps us understand that when we narrow our view to just whatever we're in the habit of looking at, we're missing a whole bunch of stuff. And that's what we do. Now, there are times that we need to narrow our view, like when? When we meditate. Yeah, if we're meditating on a particular topic, we want to narrow our view on that topic, on that object. If it could be just the mind. How about, that's a good example. Like when you drive, do you want to have your mind all over the place?
No.
No. So we don't want to mistake having a big view with not thinking about what's happening right now. The fact that we do need to pay attention, that we want to be mindful of what's happening now, and we want to notice when our thoughts are something, and we want to go, well, that's not happening now. Why am I worried about it? That's not what's going on right now. If we're constantly thinking in the future or rehearsing something from the past, we're just strengthening a habit. So our ability to focus on what's going on now is a skill that's really worth developing. It can help us really eliminate worrying. Because worrying's, seldom about right now. It is occasionally. So we really want to be able to think about, what do we want to train our minds in? If Buddhism's all about mind training, what do we want to train our minds in?
Virtuous right views.
Virtuous right views. Wow, that's a lofty phrase. So what's a virtuous right view? I mean, we have to think about that, right? What is a positive state of mind?
Cherishing others.
Mm-hmm.
Peace.
Mm-hmm. When we cherish others, are we making up a story about how perfect they are? No. Okay. We want to have an accurate view. And we want to love each other for whatever, whatever we find, not for whatever we find, that our feelings of compassion and love have nothing to do with the behavior of someone else. It's a response, inner response to others. So how does that inform our actions?
It's the catalyst.
It's a catalyst, okay?
It targets loving kindness.
Yes, it targets loving kindness. It also separates sentient beings from their actions of body, speech, and mind. We have a tendency to, when someone does something or says something or acts in some way we don't like, okay, to kind of like laminate that moment in time and act as if that person is that. So if we don't know them well, they're not friends of ours, they're not family members, they come into that category of people you don't like. You know, based on one moment of action. How does that happen? What is our mind doing to make that happen?
Judging.
Yeah, it's judging.
Exaggerating.
It's exaggerating.
A form of illusion.
I'm sorry.
Is it a form of illusion?
Yeah, totally a form of delusion. Yes, because it is mistaking a person for an action, and it's coming to a conclusion about a person based on an event. Yeah.
What if the event keeps happening? That same person.
Again, what does the action tell us?
In the case I'm describing,
I don't care what you're describing.
Yeah.
What does an action tell us?
person's
That person,
at the time.
yeah, it's this little, so but if someone does something that you feel is negative again and again and again, how does that inform us about that person? What would it inform us about you if you were the person?
I was lazy or disrespectful.
See, the Buddha says that's one of our problems, is that we equate a person with a state of mind, and we're more than that. Probably everybody in here has moments of laziness.
Yeah.
And we hold on to that and then go, I'm lazy. What's the danger with that?
It's not true.
Well, it's a lie because you're not always lazy. What's the danger from it?
Equating that person with that characteristic.
Well, it's making them permanently lazy. As if that's the only thing, that they could possibly be. And that's a problem with how we communicate with each other. This narrowing of, our opinion of someone down to a slice of their actions. It can also make us think we can't change. Yeah.
Can you talk for a second about protecting oneself?
You have to protect yourself. That's just
Okay.
sensible. That's wisdom. This isn't about letting people just do whatever it is they want to do. That has nothing to do with it. It's about hating people who do whatever you don't like. There's a difference between the two. It's an important difference in our journey to try to have peace of mind. Because, it's like any group. When are you going to get 100% consensus in any group? Never. Never. It's impossible. They have, as many opinions as the number of people in the group, right? So if we're going to be able to make decisions, come together on things, figure out a solution to things, we have to be able to have a wider view of each other, and to be willing to tear some of our barriers from our own side, to be able to communicate what is, not what is it we want, but why this is what we want. And there might be one, one more, that was easy for me to say. There may be more than one way to achieve that. But if you think, no, the only way to get this is to have this happen, then you've cut off all conversation. You know, you're only willing to see one solution. So we all need to kind of go a little deeper and say, well, what I'd really like to see happen, is, all our children be safe in schools. That's a big ask, right? So, but there are different ways that could happen. Will it be perfect? No, because things can go wrong. Safety is sort of an illusion. It's sort of a delusion. We get hurt, we're vulnerable, we die, we do, all these different things. I mean, we can't keep ourselves, even children. Terrible things happen to children's bodies without anybody doing any harm to them. It's just the nature of these bodies. They get sick, they get ill. People die at every age. So there's no way to guarantee the safety of anybody. So that can't be our agenda. We have to accept there's impermanence. But we also don't want to just act like, well, whatever happens, it, happens. Because what we do matters. How we respond to events matter. So just like these monks on their little peace walk, little being a relative term, they're working with their minds the whole time. Like right now, of course, they're working on their minds with the weather, and their fatigue, and with the insults, and then all the wonderful things. All the wonderful people come out and sit, and take, give them offerings and just feel so encouraged and inspired that they're doing this, and you can see it on their faces. So it's but it doesn't mean they don't have to work on their minds. It doesn't mean that everything that's happening on the way, because they're such nice guys after all, that it's going to be pleasant, because it's not. It's hard work. The walk is hard work. Dealing with the states of mind that arise, they're just normal people, So, they're going to wake up in the morning going, what did I make me agree to do this? But then they remember what made them agree to do this, And they don't let the fact that today is an unpleasant day stop them. That pleasantness or unpleasantness has no relevance to how they respond. What only thing that has relevance to how they respond is how they want to think, speak, and do. They're directing their own actions, not being pushed and pulled by other people's actions. And I bet they're not going around judging the people who are doing these things, like insulting them. Because it's a waste of time. And it doesn't matter. We can't, get in their minds and say, change your mind. It's not like that. So it's this wonderful display of how, for no obvious gain at all, you can work towards something you believe in out of the love and compassion for all beings, because that's what you want to do. That's the kind of person you want to be. And it helps to have support, to have community to do it with. The Buddha thought that too. I mean, the Buddha didn't say, okay, leave the householder's life and go out and, be alone and good luck with that. No, there were, there was a Sangha arose. It's like training in courage. Sometimes when we're trying to develop new habits, one of the things we need is courage because perhaps it will not fit in with what your loved ones think or expect or the world. I mean, I imagine there are a few people that look at them walking in this snowy, horrible weather and going, they are out of their minds. What fools, because we do want wisdom in our actions. But I remember this is I'm always embarrassing myself. Way back, we would do these all night when I was early on as a nun, and we'd do these all night Tara practices, where we'd stay up all night and circumambulate Taras and say Tara praises and did all this stuff. And I just kept looking at Shigella going, but why does it have to be all night? And I had a million excuses why it didn't need to be all night because like these people didn't have someone to come pick them up in the morning. They had to drive home after being on, and I go, that's not safe, Geshe-la, because you live in a monastery. You walk home. It's not an issue. All these kind of things. And I'd say, so why do we have to do this all night? And he wouldn't answer. And finally, he just looked at me and goes, because overcoming hardship is a skill. So, so sometimes just creating conditions that are difficult helps us, persevere. Because, like, it's no big deal to stay up all night. Everybody did it when they were 20, So it's just, being able to understand that the mind that arises when hardship is there is something that can be an obstacle to our behavior and our speech, and our thoughts, and being able to tolerate the discomfort of hardship, is a needed skill. Why is it needed?
It's going to happen whether you do it or not.
Well, and right. And so, like, when you're at the grocery store and the child's pulling the 17th bar of chocolate off the grocery shelf, and so if you want to intervene with that and stop that, there's a unpleasant moment in public, either the child or the adult screaming, one of them. Being able to tolerate the fact that being a good parent requires lots of moments that you're publicly having display, firmness or sternness or whatever, and your kid's not going to like it, other people are going to be a little uncomfortable perhaps, but you have to tolerate it because that's part of what you have to learn how to do as a parent, The more we can practice with the small stuff, the more we can tolerate with the big stuff, like walking through the blizzard to make a point about the state of things. Blizzard's an exaggeration. So we need courage. Does anybody ever try to start a new habit and you're kind of scared about it? So we need some courage. Courage is not needed if you're not scared. I mean, that's what it is. It's bravery in the face of fear. So you don't know how it's going to work out. You don't know how well you'll do. You don't know. So you have, but so you need that. You need to have compassion for yourself about what you're trying to overcome with courage, with that fear. Being able to tolerate the discomfort of change. being able to tolerate the discomfort that others will show you when you're changing. What do you mean you're not going to have a drink? What do you mean you're not going to eat sugar? What do you mean you can't eat wheat? What do you mean? We have all these things that sometimes we get pushback from other people, just because something has changed. Not because they really care whether you've given up wheat. It's just this idea of like, what do you mean? Okay, I have to change my note cards on you. So, we have to see ourselves accurately when we're trying to change, and that has to be updated constantly, because mostly we tell stories about ourselves, and some are terrible, and some are a little on the good side that are probably not true either, all these kind of things. And we sometimes minimize our negative habits, and other times we're exaggerating our negative habits. And same thing with our good habits. Sometimes we're minimizing our good habits, and sometimes we're exaggerating, and sometimes we just forget we have any. So being able to pay attention and recognize that not every action that we do is lazy or mean or selfish or whatever. Not everything is patient. Not everything is greedy, all the different, running through it. And then when certain habits arise, you kind of go, this one keeps getting in my way. This is a problem for me that I keep going to that mind, And instead of feeling self-hatred for that, we need to have compassion for ourselves. Yeah, this is hard. I can't believe it, Like I quit exercising when I had neck surgery. I think my muscles are atrophying. And I cannot believe I have to start over again, And there's a little part of me going, you idiot, miserable, miserable, miserable. Well, that really helps, doesn't it? So we really want to be able to understand how we get in our own way with some of our habits of how we self-judge, that we forget about compassion. We don't kind of go, yeah, this is suffering. Ugh. Still has to be done. You have to go through it, But yeah, it's hard. And what can that help you do? When you're able to have compassion for yourself, what does that help you do? Compassion for others when they're struggling with something. And it may be something that looks so easy to you, but you need to know that what they're struggling with is the same kind of thing we're struggling with on some other topic. It's just the same. It doesn't matter what the content is. We have a tendency to judge other people. That's a stupid thing to worry about. That's helpful. That's supportive. It's more just, ooh, I know how terrible it feels to be so worried about that. I know how terrible it feels to feel like you can't do that, blah, 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 because we do share those experiences. So the more we can respond with compassion to ourselves, the more likely it is that compassion will arise when others are going through it. That doesn't mean we go, oh, you don't have to do that, dear, because that's not compassion. Someone needs to give up a habit to end their suffering. You need to help them with that, or at least be supportive of their effort. That's where wisdom comes in. So pausing. So we've talked a lot about how, when we're aware that I'm getting ready to go off the bin, I'm taking a wrong direction in my mind, I've been hooked by something, that we have to pause just to keep ourselves from saying some not nice thing, or from rolling our eyes, or hanging up the phone on someone, I don't know what you do, or beating ourselves up. We have to pause and go, okay, this is that opportunity to tolerate the discomfort of this moment and do nothing. And we have to practice that, because soon as we feel discomfort, we tend to want to just fix that. And we kind of don't care how we fix it. And that's the problem. So our fixing it has been to get angry and just, just divert yourself from your, whatever was the hook, and throw it back and try to hook someone else. We have to not do that. Well, this is, these things are hard. The good news is every obstacle we meet is our opportunity to learn and to train and to do something differently. And then doing something differently may be just not to say anything, not to do anything, not to take it on, not to beat ourselves up, Like if someone says something angry at us, we don't have to go, oh, I deserve that. We do want to check it up against reality. Oh, did I? Not that anger is ever deserved. It's somebody else's disturbing emotion arising in that moment. But it doesn't mean we never do anything wrong or we don't make a mistake or we just, blah, 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 blah. So it's always good to check the information out. Oh, let's see. Is that true? And if it is true, do I think I need to change it? Because just because somebody else thinks that you need to change it doesn't mean you do. We have to develop our inner wisdom. We need to learn from others. We need to not ignore what they're telling us, but we have to use our inner wisdom to make our decision about what we need to work on, as opposed to being pulled by everybody else's, because everybody else is just as deluded as we are. But we do try to find friends and teachings and whatever that seem to be on a better track with this subject or that subject, so that we have a source to turn to that can give us some guidance, like a different way of thinking about it. So I read something yesterday where somebody was saying the best form of criticism is when you're skeptical about what you're thinking. That's critical thinking. But that's the most important thought. And it's the only thought that we actually have the experience of. We're only guessing what's in the mind of other people. But our own thoughts, we can hear them. We can, pay attention to them and we can question them. Because so many of them, or maybe all of them, are habits that we've developed. And some are good habits and some not so good. And we don't want to miss our good habits. So what can we do with the pause? Say we've gotten pretty good at pausing before we, I don't know, criticize ourselves. So what do we do with that pause? When we've got some practice. First, you just have to practice pausing. Yeah.
That's been a great concept that you introduced a while back. And I actually try to use it a lot to, when I pause, to think about what is my intention and why.
Yeah. So one, it's an opportunity to look inward, to learn something about yourself. And you might not be able to see. You just may not be sure. Kind of go, well, something, but all the information you have is something hooked me. So in that moment, you may not have any revelation. Yeah.
So after you pause, you're able to revisit what the event actually happened.
Yes.
Determined by the emotions.
Yeah. Now, we can't always do that in the moment. But it's all, whenever we get hooked, that's a clue we want to revisit that moment when we're not in it and observe what was going on, to really kind of think about what was it? Was it a tone of voice that got me hooked? Was it what was said? Was it what I was doing the moment before? You know, like if we have a fight with someone and then, go into something else, we're carrying some of that energy, aren't we? So we want to be aware of that. And so one of the things, this is why setting an intention is so helpful, is to be able to go, okay, now I'm going into this meeting or a new different conversation or a different whatever. I don't want to carry in the energy of anger. I may not be able to just drop it, but because of that, I'm going to act with care before I speak or do anything, because I know I'm carrying that energy. So sometimes, like if you had a really bad day at work, when you come home, you want to be able to stop and pause before you go in and be able to kind of, okay, I gotta adjust here. But then if you're not successful, if you start a conversation and it seems to be going wonky, you want to pause and say, I'm sorry, I had a really bad day at work, and I think that's affecting my response right now. I'm not really able to hear what you're saying because I'm still thinking about this. We just have to face up to it, you know? Oh. And that's better than doing harm, just trying to tough it out. Because sometimes we can't do it. We've really been hooked. We've been hooked and now we're being dragged by the line. So, the more that we can just observe with kindness, like Pema Chodron says, Maitri, that, unconditional friendliness towards ourselves and others, just this ability to recognize that no one acts perfectly, no one acts exactly how they're hoping to act in any moment. And yet we have to interact. We engage with each other, So it's the slower we can go with our speech, with our physical actions, that's a skill that's worth developing, just because it gives us more time to take into account. And our mind's very fast. So we're actually really capable of taking in a lot of information and kind of steering ourselves in a different direction. We see that we're going amiss. This all takes practice. And one of the key pieces of the practice is what's in it for me. Why do I want to make this change? You said that when that urge is really strong to snap at someone or to placate someone or to not be assertive when you need to speak up, whatever it is, whatever I had a point. I spoke too fast, I lost it. We need to be able to bring those reasons to mind of why it's important to us. Because usually why it's important to us also makes it important for others around us. The people who care about us, they want us to take care of ourselves. They may be a little picky about how you do it, just like you are. So it's just a process. But the point is, it's like, this is one of those ways in which self-care becomes part of cherishing others. Being able to recognize danger, so that you can slow down or rethink or, just ask permission. I'm going to have to think about this for a minute, I'll get back to you on that. And that may take a whole new way of communicating with others. They may not be used to going, I have to think about that a minute. Oh, what do you mean you have to think about it? We have to be able to take pushback. You ever think those kind of things? Or am I the only person who sits there and goes, you know, yeah. We just need to recognize we're all in the same boat. We all would like to treat each other better. We'd all like to be happier, peaceful, you know, whatever it is, you know, all of those things. We want to not suffer. And everybody wants to not suffer. And we don't know what we're doing. We chase suffering all the time, you know. So this pause gives us an opportunity. First, you have to just practice the pause. And guess what happens when you practice the pause and you don't say anything or do anything? You have less regret. And when you notice that, well, I'm so glad I didn't say anything. You want to rejoice because you're seeing one of the benefits that you don't regret it. You know, or you don't, I mean, it can be even so obviously what's in it for you. You don't commit to something you really didn't want to commit to. You know, slowing down is a useful process.
Tendron, I have a question.
Oh.
I have a question. Can you talk about the difference or the relationship to just not reacting and just letting things blow over and de-escalating a situation? Because
Like I had that
sometimes
skill.
you're
Yes.
in a situation. What's that? What?
I said, I'm not sure I have that skill.
Sometimes, I guess I'll just make this personal. I'm living with my adult son who's very hot-headed,
You know, we're
very
recorded.
reactive. And if I don't stand up for myself, I'm a complete doormat and he escalates.
Yep.
He gets worse. If I don't at least call him out on his egregious
this is
behavior at times and try to de-escalate if he's gone off the deep end, how do you
right.
do that within balance and maintain your balance?
Well, you may not be able to maintain your balance because everything's off balance in that moment. Okay. But the more you develop that understanding and belief, really belief, the faith of conviction that you love this person and tolerating negative behavior does not help this person.
Mm.
And that it's out of love, it's not out of self-defense. You know, it's out of being the guidance that we need. I mean, we even have to do this with friends sometimes. Oh, that's not acceptable. You know, that is having wisdom in our compassion and our love. You know, you want him to be happy. The way he's acting is never going to get there. So we have to be firm. But the more you can have the faith of conviction that that is true, that that reflects your love and compassion for him, the less it will throw you if he's being, you know, acting in this way, or you have to respond to it. You know, the fact that we feel torn about how we respond is part of that energy of not being peaceful. When you're confident that your response is appropriate, you know, then that takes that energy of, you know, I have to manufacture energy to say this, you know, and then I have to be triggered to say this. No, that's not true. You can just make the decision that when this happens, that's not acceptable, you know, and I'm going to say something about it. And you don't want to say it with anger. You certainly don't want to say it with animosity. And also, and this is a hard one, we don't want to say it with frustration. You know, we need to be patient with ourselves and patient with others. I mean, if you think about things you've tried to change in yourself, that you're still trying to change in yourself, you know, we need patience. So just because we say the right thing, do the right thing when in situations, it doesn't mean that will ever end. you may have to have that opportunity again. Because we can't control other people's change. We can't even control the pace at which we change. You know, we just keep trying and we get better. Baby steps, sometimes great big steps. Some things we really hit our head against the wall again and again. It's for some whatever reason. It's really, I have really trouble getting rid of my anxiety. I can't get rid of my anxiety. I mean, that's, it's like, okay, I'm 70 years old. What do I have to be anxious about? It's just ridiculous, but it's a fact. And I know that anxiety arises in me, and I know I have to work with it. Because if I don't work with it, I'll say things I'll regret. I'll do things that don't have any wisdom in them. It's like, I'll move too fast. I'll talk too fast, blah, 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 blah. So we have to accept this is what I mean about a realistic assessment of ourselves. So we always need to be asking, is it true? Have I done nothing with things? Yeah, I used to have, the heart palpitations and blah, 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 I don't do that. So it's this, we have to respect that none of this is easy. It's just worthwhile. Life's hard. So, this is just another one of those things. Oh, this is going to take effort. Oh, well, when you think about the things that you also take effort, like having an argument. That takes effort. It's just not a good use of your energy. Holding things back takes effort. Suppressing any emotion takes a lot of effort. What we want to do is be able to work with these things. And that takes effort. Yeah.
How is that different from pausing,
How is what different from pausing?
suppressing it?
Oh, suppressing is where you just act like I'm not going to feel that. It's bad to feel that way. Da, 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 da. That doesn't process anything because you do feel that way. It's a lie, I mean, we just need to go, oh, anger's arisen. Oh my goodness, anger's arisen again. And my impatience rises all the time. There it goes again. But it's just this acknowledgement that you don't want to act on it. It's a choice, not an effort to resist what's happening. Suppression's a resistance to what is. And that doesn't help. It'll just bounce back stronger. But it may take a lot of conditioning, finally you get really mad. I just spit on my computer, excuse me. Yuck. Are you sure I'm not screaming?
I'm sure you spit.
I'm just okay. Hey. So that's an important question because it really isn't about suppressing. It's about saying, I'm choosing not to act on this. I've noticed that I've been hooked and I'm not going to act on it. And that you really do want to reflect on that. Okay, why was I hooked? And then you may not be able to figure that out. But you can still go, well, no matter what the reason was, because it's not external factors that cause these things, it's inner habits. So sometimes we're always looking for what did they say or do or da 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 da, when it's really our response. Sometimes we get angry because someone else is confident. It's like, how dare they? I mean, we're weird. Let's face it, we have all these disturbing emotions because we're misguided about what leads us out of suffering. We think others will be able to, change and get it right. And then everything will be fine. Or we think we'll get the right job and the right amount of money in the bank and the right amount of food, and we eat the right food, and on and on, get enough exercise, we do that. All these things are important to our daily life, but they are not the cause of how, it's our response to stuff. So often it's like what I do in my pauses, you'd think, I promise I have some, is that, I look for, where am I in this picture? What am I afraid of losing? What am I afraid of not getting? What am I afraid of? Period. What am I afraid of? Because that's always a biggie. That it's, where am I? Because that hook is about us.
Mhm.
It's not about someone else. We're the one hooked. I'm not saying somebody else isn't trying to hook you. It's just that, it's we're hooked, and that's our inner habit. And so we want to look for what is this? What is this about this situation that I'm uncomfortable in? And sometimes it's, the other way. We don't talk about it as much because we like it, that we're getting, infatuation, or, that it's like, ooh, this is nice. And then we go off with the exaggerations about that. I found the perfect person. No. That distracts us about our real relationship over here. So we just have to, it's realizing that hook is a sign. For me, it's this little touch right here. And I've gotten very good at noticing it pretty early on. Not always, but for the most part. So it's more manageable when the sooner you catch it. But again, I talked too fast and now I've forgotten where I was going. Get with the program, woman. Okay. But if you can find where you were in the picture, what your self-interest is, and that doesn't mean selfish necessarily. I mean, it may turn out to be, oh, I just want this, maybe self-centeredness, but you want to find you in the picture, because that you in the picture is how you're projecting. You're doing everything through that filter. So you want to find that, because then it's like when the easy stuff, when I get in a car and I'm running a little late, and then, I catch a red light, and and then somebody didn't, whatever. And there's a part of me that's starting to get really impatient with everybody else on the road, and that's when my little mind goes, oh, you want to be queen of the universe, don't you? And that, when you get in the car and you're on the road, everybody else disappears, because that's really what I want. Yeah, that's, again, I'm embarrassing myself. But this is from looking at, where's your self-interest? What is this about that you're getting more and more agitated? And then, but when I remember that, it's all pretty funny. It totally loses its power because it's ridiculous. When someone doesn't look at me the right way or say something nice when I, da 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 da, and I'm kind of like, what did I do wrong? I have to remind myself, oh, you think that everybody's thinking about you, right? Wrong, another, oh, when I'm queen of the universe. I mean, this is the thing. Everything about our physical form tells us we're the center of the universe. The way our stereoscopic vision works, we're always the center of our universe. You're over there to the side. I'm sure that's not how you feel. It's just, and this is one of the problems the Buddha says, is that we have a body, and, things appear to us in a certain way that's not based on how things actually exist. And the biggest one is the way we appear to ourselves. So sometimes we inflate it, sometimes we diminish it. We don't have equanimity.
expand on that a little more about the, sometimes we don't have equanimity.
Anybody familiar with not having equanimity? See, this is the thing, is that this is why looking for your self-interest is so helpful, because it helps us recognize how we're constantly gauging everything according to how it suits us. We're coming from that angle. And it's not that we don't have the ability to come from other angles. Like if you're a nurse or you're a doctor or you're, whatever, you're a healthcare provider of some sort, or you're a mental health provider of some sort, or you're working, when you're trying to help others, you're trying to look at it from the other's point of view. Do they really hurt? Oh, their facial expressions are showing maybe pain, so you're trying to key into that. But we're also, when we're not so focused on somebody else doing something for someone else, then it's us that is in there. Everything's from this perspective of, okay, what's in it for me? Or what, I don't want that. So how can I avoid it? How can I run away from it? How can I just, ignore that meeting and pretend it goes away? So the more familiar we get that we're doing that, the more occasions where it's kind of funny that we're doing that, when you recognize that, oh, you're the king of your universe, that helps cut some of the power of it, makes it a little easier to look. But it also is that reminder that most of what we experience moment to moment is no big deal. And we're making it a big deal. And it's because of that self-interest in there somewhere. It's exaggerating the importance moment to moment. So everything in life just feels a little more ratcheted up. And the more that we can just greet each moment with, it doesn't matter whether it's pleasant or unpleasant. You just, you don't resist what is, and you just handle it. That makes sense. Yep.
I once had heard a priest give a sermon, and in his sermon, he suggested this. He used the word dispute. When you have or you don't feel right with someone, I apply it all the time, and it works. And if you have a dispute or got bad feelings from somebody, what you do is you step back, you learn where they are coming from. And then once you understand where they are coming from, then you know if you have
A real dispute.
yeah. And I apply that, when I get in those situations, and it works.
Yeah. So if you have, if you're having a conversation with someone, you have lots of opportunities to explore further. And this is where curiosity is so important. This ability to, kind of go, don't jump to assumptions, in your mind, you need to try to understand more. Okay. You may just be hearing, the conclusion, and you want to know what's behind, what's driving that, so you want to try to understand more instead of immediately see what's, oh no, that won't do, which is about you again. So being able to see that there's, that habit isn't helpful. And instead, because, if there's a dispute, you really want a resolution, right? I mean, it's just like, and a resolution's better than a dispute at all. Maybe there really isn't anything being disputed. You both want the same thing. It's the how that you don't not agreeing on. And so sometimes when you have that energy of really communicating with each other, then another possibility arises. Or then you just simply understand where they're coming from and you don't have a problem with it. What does that require on everybody's part?
Patience.
Dialogue.
I'm sorry,
Dialogue.
but what do we need to be able to do that?
Open mind.
Introspection, empathy.
We need to tear down some of our walls because often we don't share what's behind it. whatever we've just said, you know, what's the energy in the dispute out of self-protection, or we think it's protection, you know. And so sometimes we have to reveal more about ourselves, and we don't realize we're not revealing it, you know, but that's somehow, you know, when you display that curiosity and ask for more information and try to understand, you know, what's that about, you know, blah, 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 then you'll have the opportunity to also reveal, you know, what's coming from your side. If it's a dispute, it's two people. So, you know, what's coming from your side, you know, that is, you know, so that you can share with them so they understand where you're coming from, you know. So it's that ability to, this is where equanimity helps, you know, and also just the more accurate view we have of ourselves, acceptance of ourselves. Oh, I'm not a Buddha yet, so I'm not going to get it just right, you know. The more we can relax about who we are, develop inner wisdom that we have value no matter what we say, you know, the more we can listen with that open mind, that curious mind, without feeling threatened, you know. So it's just this, you know, kind of, we want to be able to listen with confidence that our value, our opinion has value, the other person's opinion has value, that, you know, there's more than one way to solve problems, disputes, blah, 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 you know, all that kind of stuff. So that takes a little bit of courage, but it also takes an accurate self-view. You know, you have to be familiar with yourself, you know, and sometimes someone will say something and you'll be like, when the Australia, you gobsmacked, you know, like an Australian. Gobsmacked. I never expected that to be what was said, you know, blah, 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 blah. Oh, I've never heard of such a thing. You know, something really comes out, you know, for you out of left field. It's like, whoa, you know, and then you realize I've never thought about something from that angle, you know, and so it's just, you know, you want to be curious about it, not immediately throw a wall up again, you know, around it. So it's this openness that I want to get to know you better. You know, when we have conversations with others, if we can be motivated by, you know, I want to get to know you better. I want to understand you better. I want you to understand me better. I want, you know, like, hey, you know, welcome to the neighborhood kind of attitude. So it's just this, but that means, you know, if we have protective barriers, if we're afraid of having to share what's in it for us or something, you know, why we think that, you know, often like I can be very, very, I'm, you know, a pacifist kind of thing, da 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 da, until I really get scared of nuclear war or something. And then when I'm really scared, it's harder for me not to want somebody who's got power to do something to stop these fools over here. Yeah. You know, it's just, and it comes from my own fear. You know, like if you've ever walked into a volatile situation and you don't know what to do, you know, sometimes I want to be rescued from that. You know, nuns bump into weird things. So anyway, you know, so what I'm saying, we need to be aware of that. When I feel like, you know, my world is threatened, you know, I start to get a little more needy. I want a certain outcome, you know, and I'm willing to go to links that I wouldn't think I would be willing to go to in my mind, obviously, not doing anything. And I want to be aware of that because that fear is coloring my view. And I don't want to go that direction. You know, I never want force to be the answer to anything. I don't think it's an effective answer to anything. It's not an answer, basically. You know, but I know that when I'm afraid of being harmed, the world blowing up or something, that starts to creep in. You know, and so I have to be extra careful with myself. You know, and recognize, what do you think? You're not impermanent, you know? So that's what I mean by really looking. Are you responding? Are you overreacting to this because there's something that really frightens you, or there's some outcome you really want? And then you can, once you uncover it, then you can go, is that real? Oh, is that, do you think that would work? All those things. Then you can use your reasoning to be able to go, well, that's ridiculous. And then it loses all its power. And then the next time that fear comes up, you can kind of go, oh yeah, I'm not listening to you. We believe everything we think, and it's not, and most of it's not true. It's, we have to know ourselves well. Doesn't mean we just say, I don't have to change, but we want to understand we're not Buddhas yet. We're going to find stuff that's not very pretty. We're going to find stuff that is very pretty, So don't miss when you're looking at yourself, all the times you're generous, all the times you're patient, all the times you just have a loving thought towards someone, all the times that you really worry about someone's suffering, all the times that you help, all of these things are happening too. And we want to cultivate them. Those are the kinds that when we reflect back, we want to go, oh, I want to do that more often. I remember how good I felt when I did that. Oh, discussing this or that was a little uncomfortable at first, but I'm so glad we did that. So that it encourages us to keep doing that. What do you think?
Great.
We have one great. But does this make sense? Yep.
Um, you said that we have to have curiosity to get to know something. But earlier you said that if you find out that the way someone's thinking is incorrect, then like how do we have compassion for someone when we get to know them and their mindset isn't aligned with who you are?
I didn't say you'd have to, necessarily like them,
Right.
but wanting them to be happy and wanting them not to suffer are separate states of mind from preference. Okay. Then also concluding that someone's not worth anything because they don't agree with you, you want to look at that attitude. That, is there any quality about them that you like? Do they like their children? Do they have pets? Do they, do they do any good deeds? Whatever. You don't have to have, this is the thing, is that like with our families, do all you all get along with your family perfectly? Do you all agree with what the others think? Do you do you want to just walk away from them because you're not the same kind of people, whatever, I mean, that may be an option. It may be a good option, but it's just, but the point is we want to be able to be more inclusive in our sphere of concern, that it's, you might not want to date them, it's like, and that's okay. That's not a problem. It's in Buddhism, love is the wish that others be happy. Compassion is the wish that they are free from suffering. It is not that I like everything they do, think, or say. That's preference. We can learn from, we can see other people's action. Now we can't know what's in their mind. I mean, we only know what they share, and only same with us. They don't know us either, they can't read our minds. I did it again. I'm having a banner day. When I was in Europe a couple of million decades ago, I would go to vegetarian restaurants because it was the cheapest food, and I wasn't vegetarian at the time. I was 20 or something, and so, but at the vegetarian restaurants, there would be a big table, and so you just sit with all these, people you don't know, and in Europe they talked about politics a lot in their social gatherings, which sort of surprised me, But you could tell that nobody held like they just discussed it, and even if they completely disagreed, they got up and they were still friends, and I was really impressed by that. I just thought, well, that's cool, because then you can actually talk about things, and maybe come up with a new idea, that could solve some of the world's problems. It's great. And so we want to be able to have an expansive view so that we can tolerate our differences of opinion, because that's what they are, the difference of opinion. Doesn't mean you vote the same way or you go to the same protest or whatever. I mean, it just means that you don't write off people because they have a different point of view. It may mean you don't date them, So, I mean, that's important. But it's just this, we tend to judge people by their points of view, like somehow they're evil if they think this. That's not fair. It's not realistic. We have we're approaching things from different angles. We may think they're wrong, That's okay. We're not all going to agree. And you can even say, well, if your answer is this and you're out doing that, I'm going to be protesting you. Oh, I mean, this is the thing. So even if we think someone's view is dangerous, if we're telling ourselves that that person is somehow by nature evil or, hateable or whatever, they have Buddha nature. They can become a Buddha just like you. It's just it's a reaction to a moment in time. When I think back, when you read history and you kind of look at some things that people did and said and and you think, oh my God, how did anybody live during those times? I would have hated them all, but of course you wouldn't have. You would have met friends, you would have had loved ones during that time, So we just have to understand that it's, that this cycle of life is very complicated and we're making it complicated. No one's doing that to us. But again, we can have preferences. I don't agree with that point of view. And I will do my best to voice my opposition to that point of view. But I'm not going to hate you for having it. It's hard. It is not easy, especially when we feel threatened by a point of view. Yeah.
What I find freeing is not judging
The person.
What's that?
I think we have to judge views and actions in the sense of, I don't want to do that, or I don't want to think that way, or I don't want to be that. But we don't need to judge people for whatever their opinions are.
Yeah, and if you don't judge, the relationship keeps going, so you can understand more of the perspective and so forth, which I think the Europeans have more of that sophistication.
They're living with the different countries, like as neighbors, they drive an hour, they're in a different country, and different language and all this kind of stuff. That's helpful. That experience is helpful. It's a good condition for being able to do that. And of course, it doesn't always work either. It's not like they don't have problems in Europe, so it's just, it's this understanding that the value of sentient being. We're all one huge family. And so if you cut your family members slack for having a different point of view, you need to think about doing that beyond that circle. According to the Buddha, we've all been intimate family members from life after life. Yeah.
How about we talking about judging? How about feeling being judged? a lot of hurt and suffering are from feel like being judged by others.
Okay, the key word there is you feel like you are being judged. You are doing that, not the other person. I mean, they may be, acting, but we can't read their minds, first of all. But also, you don't have to feel judged, even if they're judging you. You don't have to take their judgment as fact, So that's one of those shifts we have to make, is that just because someone says it, even if they clearly believe it, although we don't know that until we can read their minds, it's really, I don't have to take it on. They may be having a bad day, and nothing anybody does is it going to be, snarked at. I don't know that's the word, but I'm using it. Again, it's this, just like we don't need to judge others in their value as a human being, doesn't mean we don't need to lock them up because of their actions. This is what we have to tease out. Did anybody see Dead Man Walking?
Mhm.
It's that, Helen Prejean or whatever her last name is, she really was living her faith, really trying to, it doesn't matter what it is you did. If you ask for forgiveness, if you own it, ask for forgiveness, God will forgive you. You are loved, period. And it's not based on what you do, what you think, whatever. It's because you exist. And it was so interesting for me to watch that, because it was a horrific, it was just my cup of tea of like, oh, I would feel threatened by this guy, it was just like, oh, let's kill him. Piece of cake, just, I don't really mean that. I don't believe in the death penalty, but it's just it was a great situation for me to have the opportunity to go, wow, what does it take to separate a person from an action, and it's not easy to do. And it doesn't mean, it wasn't like she was sitting there going, you should get out of jail. Wasn't meaning that you shouldn't take responsibility for what you did and regret it, all those things. So it's just this, and it's not meaning that she would, necessarily liked him back in his, his pre-repentance days. Because liking or disliking is just a preference. It's like liking chocolate cake or not liking chocolate cake. It's just a preference. Liking someone's hairdo, not liking someone's hairdo. All those things are preferences.
Venerable Tendron, so we're having a good conversation, and it's going along nice. There's something we like, or something that really offends us. So to respond, it's how we respond,
Yep.
and that's the difficult part.
Well, the difficult part is being able to be honest and trust that, just like you could disagree, and they can disagree with you, that doesn't mean your worth goes out the window. We don't have to make everybody else think like we do. That's an outcome that we're craving. I need to change your opinion, because not changing your opinion means I may be threatened at some time. And first of all, we can't actually do that. We can influence, but we can't make it happen. Okay, enough of that. Wears us out, doesn't it? It's hard. And we're out of time. It's prayer time. So think about those lovely monks walking for peace, and all the lovely people who've come out to say hello, and appreciate them. And they are modeling that, all those responses of being able to just, people are going to disagree. People are going to think, this is a stupid thing to be doing, what a waste of time, energy, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. So we, it's that they are, to me, modeling behavior I want to develop. I want to work on my mind the same way. And because I want to be able to, I know the value of it. I have a taste of the experience of change, and it's positive, so I know I regret less and I act better. That's all I have. Thanks, Nana. Go ahead. All right. So rejoice in your efforts, just that, hey, you're trying to work on your mind. That's cool. Wouldn't it be great if most of the world was doing that? Okay. Now we're dedicating the results of that positive effort because it will ripen for us in a positive way to benefit others. May all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of our merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled, with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness, and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then, to dispel the miseries of the world. And then the long life prayer for His Holiness, Dalai Lama. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All powerful Tenrezi, Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until Samsara ends. And then for the swift return, Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Peerless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious ones, Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, victorious Losam father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now. And then spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice. You wore the armor of patience that's never discouraged. Incomparable Venerable Guru, to you I make request. While striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and from other living beings, you suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the three jewels and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of the reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples. Okay, so this week we have a class on the overview of the whole path.